Welcome back. It's our Middays with Mark Hour. Congressman Mark Pocan, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, congressman representing the 2nd District of Wisconsin, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan, on the line with us, taking your calls for the hour. And Russell in Hickory Hills, Illinois. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Pocan, I wanted to ask, if you talk to your colleagues in the House, what you guys are going to do if he goes through with this threat of taking your health care away from you in the Senate, because that sounds like a pretty stiff threat. And I thought Obamacare, he can't stop making payments on it. It's in the bill. Have you had a comment on that? Have you talked about that, about when he takes your health care away?
Yeah, Russell, thanks for your question. So, first of all, how to win friends and influence people. Generally, taking away the health care of the Republicans you're trying to get the votes for it would not be the recommended course. So, I think the problem is he just gets mad, right? And he tweets or he bursts out with some kind of a response that he never plans on actually executing. I think the real question is, when are they going to get with us to fix what needs to be fixed? Because clearly the House did a terrible vote. They took that would take away health care from tens of millions of people and make older Americans pay more. And really, it was all about a big tax break for the wealthiest and for insurance companies and big pharma. But, they're desperate to just check a box that they got rid of Obamacare, and they need this money to start their tax reform, what they really want to do, which is take care of their wealthy donors and the wealthy companies in this country. So, whenever we need, what we're trying to focus on, and I think you're starting to see this, the Help Us committee, the subcommittee in the Senate is looking at doing some bipartisan conversations. You've got to at least keep the Affordable Care Act going. You have to keep those amounts that get paid to the insurance company that's subsidized to make sure that people have health insurance so people don't lose it. I'm seeing some movement there. I'm hoping at some point that'll break through. I've been really disappointed in Paul Ryan, once again saying the House won't do anything different. We've already voted on it, rather than recognizing that their plan is a failure. But again, I think a lot of it's bravado by the president, desperate to have a win, to check a box that he got rid of Obamacare, and to start the tax cuts for the wealthiest. And, you're going to hear a lot of rhetoric between now and then. I think it's tough to get a lot of the Republicans to go that much against their constituents, enough in some of these swing districts. So we've got promise. We just have to keep the pressure on. People have to keep calling their members of Congress.
Bob in San Luis Obispo, California. You're on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
Thank you, Tom. Congressman, there was a very lengthy, detailed article in Vanity Fair about the sheer ineptitude of the Trump administration simply going into the Department of Energy, not talking about all the other departments. And, the first people they sent over there didn't even have the necessary security clearance to be briefed. Is there anything that holds this administration accountable for not staffing the government agencies to the levels that has always been the normal way of doing things?
And if I could add to that, I've seen reports that Rick Perry did not realize that the Department of Energy was in charge of our nuclear stockpile, our nuclear weapons, when he took it over. Could that have something to do with the problem, or were those just snarky fake news stories? I frankly don't know. Congressman?
No, my guess is from Rick Perry that is true. Not exactly a confidence builder, is it? I do see this across all departments. We're having a problem that he has not made the appointments of political leaders in these areas across the board. So while they're complaining the Senate hasn't approved some of the people they put out there, some for good reason, you have to have a review. They haven't filled a number of these positions, and for the first time ever, we're seeing this where, generally what doesn't get interfered with during all the politics of policy is the casework we can do for constituents, helping them navigate federal agencies. We're starting to have problems there in our office that we never had before, simply because they're not making the appointments they need to. So I don't know if some of it is just incompetence by, again, the Trump administration, because we've seen plenty of it. I don't know if some of it might be intentional in some agencies to slow walk it, but it's becoming a problem across the board that we're seeing. And, I think that's going to be an issue pretty soon that will rise to the level that Republicans are going to see this as well in Congress, that they can't get casework done for their constituents.
Okay. Marcia in Englewood, Florida. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. It's so good to see
Hey, Marcia.
There's a couple issues. I know that they're going to start working on the tax code. I don't know when, but it's on their minds now. There's a couple issues in the tax code that really bug me something awful. The first one is every time one of these big corporations gets hit with a multi-million or multi-billion dollar fine, they're allowed to deduct that on their taxes. Am I correct?
I'm not sure about every fining. Couldn't say that definitively.
I think it's just incredible that not only don't these people that do actually criminal offenses against the American people, they don't go to jail, but they can deduct the cost of those penalties, however many billions they were charged, they can apply to their taxes as a tax break. That's one tax break that I totally disapprove of. Another one is when I was a working person, I'm 74, I'll be 75 soon, so I haven't worked in a long time and haven't filed taxes in a long time. But when I did file taxes, my medical bills had to reach such an astronomical amount in the last few tax filings of my working experience that I couldn't deduct them. I could not deduct my medical expenses because they did not reach the threshold. I don't see why people earning less than, let's say, $250,000 have some crazy threshold that they have to meet of medical expenses in order to be able to include them in their tax deductions. Those are two things that really boil me.
Congressman?
Sure. No, I hear you, Marcia. And the first one, I'd have to check because I don't know if I could say that of all fines they're all deductible. Like, for some reason, I think they're not from something I've heard, but I just don't have that information handy to offer up. What I can tell you is, they desperately want to reduce taxes on the wealthiest and on corporations. The goal that they want to reduce the corporate weight way down because we have one of the highest in the country, allegedly. The problem is that's on paper, but when you take all the different exemptions that are out there, like you've mentioned, the effective rate really is more like 16, 17, 18%, somewhere in there, which is about half of what the actual rate is. So I can tell you this. I think it's going to be it's very difficult for them to really get in there and do this because every group that's fought for an exemption doesn't want to give it up to lower the rate. It's going to be a giant political fight. If they thought healthcare was difficult, I guarantee tax reform will be more difficult. But that's part of why the initial so-called healthcare bill they put out there had that giant tax cut to start what they're trying to get towards in relieving taxes for, quite honestly, it's their donors and their voters, the wealthiest in this country, and not for everyone else. So I think, there's a lot of individual tax deductions we could point to as absurd, but more we have to be careful of what they're trying to do, which is they'll give us a penny or maybe a nickel in tax breaks for the middle class and those aspiring to be in the middle class, and then all the real money will go towards the wealthiest and for big corporations, and that's not the direction we need to do on the tax code.
Todd in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, go Marcia. I like what she had to say first off, and thank you both. Hey, real quick, Randy Bryce, what is the DCCC doing to support him? Because in the past, they have always had a hands-off approach to Paul Ryan and just kind of let him continuously get reelected. There's been no effort to put forth a Democratic candidate, and this guy is coming from the grassroots effort. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. So generally, and generally means there's exceptions to the rule, but generally the DCCC doesn't get involved when there's primaries. Technically, there is still one other person in the primary in Randy's race. However, having said that, NARAL, for instance, today endorsed Randy Bryce. I think that came out as a release. He's getting, SEIU, the momentum is all on his side. The Progressive Caucus made our first endorsement being Randy Bryce. A lot of other big organizations have as well. So I think our conversations with the DTRIP have been not so much, I think, that they're trying to stay away from Paul Ryan, but that, in some cases where there's someone who's clearly going to be so far ahead of anyone else in a race, and like in this case, it's a real race with a real candidate, they should probably pay attention. So that's kind of the conversations that many of us have had with the DCCC. It's not so much that they've left Paul Ryan alone as they didn't see it as a winnable seat because of some previous candidates, or there could have been a primary and they don't, again, they're not supposed to generally get involved in primaries. We're trying to make a case that Randy is the real thing. This is a real race. This is a guy who's not in his district very often. He wrote a health care bill that is going to take away health care from tens of millions of people.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your questions for Congressman Mark Pocan in our Middays with Mark hour right after this.